You're listening to the Public Health Entrepreneurs Podcast with your host, Dr. Charlotte Huntley. Are you ready to start consulting? You don't need to have everything figured out to start, but you do need a few things in place. Welcome to Public Health Entrepreneurs, the podcast for leaders transforming health at the population level. I'm Dr. Charlotte Huntley, and whether your background is policy, research, epidemiology, technology, pharmacy, environmental science, or another field entirely, if you're building a business focused on population health, this podcast is for you. I bring over 25 years of experience in healthcare, public health, and entrepreneurship to help you build the business strategies that create healthier communities. That's what we have in common. There's a lot of confusion about what you actually need to have in place before launching your consulting business. So let me clear up a few of those things for you today on this episode. The first thing I would like to highlight for you is that you need to have a level of readiness. And you may be wondering, well, what does readiness actually mean? You don't need to have everything figured out to start, but you do need to have clarity on your direction and how you talk about your services. Lean in on simplicity and clarity, who you serve and the problem you solve. For example, if you are a grant writing consultant, I use this example a lot. I have a lot of friends who are grant writers, and it's an easy example to use. But if you're a grant writing consultant, get really clear on what specific grant writing your services that you're providing for your clients. For example, there's a whole spectrum of services in grant writing, from the research to identifying opportunities to helping clients with the actual writing process and then managing them once they've been awarded. There's a lot involved. So getting really clear on what aspects of grant writing you're providing services for and the type of clients that you will focus on supporting. That's another part that's really essential. Working with a very small nonprofit organization is a very different client type than a large nonprofit organization, for example, or private industry clients versus local government versus federal government. So there's a lot of opportunities and for client types, and getting really clear is really important. So essential clarity checklist. If I were to give a checklist, I would have you answer questions for yourself. Do you know your niche? That would be one part of the checklist, one item on the checklist. Another could be, can you describe what you offer? Believe it or not, that can be a stumbling block because, again, people have so many ideas, and being able to clarify that is challenging. Another item on your checklist could be, do you know who you serve? Like I said, large nonprofits are very different from small nonprofits and very different from commercial or private industry. And local government is different from state government, from federal government. So all of those things are factors to consider. And so an item on your checklist could be, do you know who you serve? And if not, then really getting clarity first is a priority, okay? What you don't need to start. This is worth mentioning. I see this often. A few things that you don't need to worry about getting together before you start. You don't need a perfect website. Everyone loves to go straight to the website. You don't need a perfect website. Oftentimes, you don't need a website right at the beginning, depending on what you're doing, because it'll pivot and change. You're spending so much money on rebranding and changing a website. You don't need a perfect website to get started. You need something, maybe. Depends. My favorite answer, depends, but it really does depend on the situation. I've coached a client in the past more than once, but one comes to mind who grew her business to 6 figures before she ever got a website. So it just depends on the circumstances. So you don't need a perfect website. You don't need fancy branding. I could go into a long tangent about that, but I won't. But I will share with you that that's a hang up, and people think they have to have all that figured out. I didn't have branding. My first business, my consulting business, I did not have branding in place for the first. I picked something and went with it initially, but it was about 2 years in before I really started to really think about what that meant and what I wanted it to be. So you don't need fancy branding to get started. You don't need complex systems. There are a lot of wonderful tools and a lot of wonderful technology that you will be able to take advantage of. But I don't want you to get stuck in complex systems when you're just trying to get started. So for example, a CRM is something that people always ask about. And there's a huge learning curve. Doesn't matter which one you decide to use, unless you're already familiar with some. So go with something you're already familiar with, or work with a spreadsheet. That's a great CRM for the beginning. And sometimes you don't really need Like I said, complex systems just need to get started. It needs to be clear. You'd be able to have a place to organize your list of contacts and so forth. So you don't need complex systems to get started. And you don't need thousands of followers. These are often distractions for new consultants, not requirements for starting your business. So you don't need thousands of followers to get started with your consulting business. And there's a whole lot I could say about that, but I'm going to leave it right there because those are some of the top things that I find people get really stuck with in trying to get started. And I don't want you to get bogged down there. Okay. The confidence factor. I brought this up a few times in recent episodes. Readiness includes feeling confident enough to have sales conversations and present your services. This comes from practice and feedback. So this is extremely important. You need to have these sales conversations in order to attract your first sale and first client. So readiness isn't about having everything perfect. It's about having clarity, confidence, and a willingness to take action. Really and truly, those are essential parts of getting started. If you've been getting ready for months, using air quotes, you may need outside perspective to identify what's actually holding you back. So that's where a coach, a mentor, or a peer group of entrepreneurs can really help identify that. Sometimes you can't see it because you're in the middle of it, but a good eye from a different perspective can help identify what the holdup may be. Now, I am hosting a live virtual mastermind opportunity for a small group of public health consultants or public health entrepreneurs, I should say, just like you, who are interested in starting their consulting business or getting unstuck if they've gotten started and feeling stuck. It's called Consulting Clarity, a premium mastermind experience, and it's designed to give you what you actually need. Personalized guidance based on your specific questions. Before we actually have our live session, right before that, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions and your challenges to me because I take that information and I customize our live experience so that you're getting the information that you need, what you're actually struggling with to get you unstuck. We'll have hot seat coaching, direct interactions with me, peer group feedback, and a lot of hands-on practice of what I'll be teaching and guiding you on. So if you'd like to learn more, you can visit our website, publichealthentrepreneurs.com. Click on Mastermind in the menu and you'll find all the details. I've also put the link in the show notes with this episode to make it a little easier for you to find. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for listening. Visit publichealthentrepreneurs.com to learn more.